Alright guys, just a quick response video here to the power issue with the fetcher goggles, some of the fetcher goggles, the new HDOs and some of the older ones. I think the Attitude series don't have these problems, but it appears like the HD series, the HD2, HD3 and some other goggles have kind of a problem with the power supply for the receiver module. That has been figured out by Immersion SE. They just released, or they are releasing right now, I'm not quite sure, the new rapid fire receiver module, and they found out that when they plug in their receiver module, the voltage drops from the 5 volts down to a quite a bit lower voltage, and the module can't work as good with that lower voltage. If the module detects under voltage, they just shut down one of the two diversity receivers to keep down the amps it draws to save your fetcher goggles, because all that voltage that's dropping in the 5 volt line just get transferred into heat and could eventually damage your fetcher goggles. Well, I thought that's very interesting. I just bought myself these HD3 goggles here, and I want to use it with the Eachine Pro 58 receiver model. I've not flashed Achilles to it yet, but I'm going to soon. And yeah, I just thought I should do some measurements on my module and look if everything is alright, and the results were quite interesting. So I've just put two cables down here in the module bay. The very bottom connector hole is the positive, it should supply 5 volt, and the third one from the bottom is ground. And I've hooked my multimeter up to it, measuring the voltage, and I'm going to turn the module bay on right now. As you can see, everything is totally perfect. We get 5 volt out of the output. Alright, so now let's go and plug in the module. There we go, and repeat that experiment. Alright, so now I've got the module plugged in and powered up, and now I'm going to measure the voltage again. I've already hooked up the ground to my multimeter. This outer winding of the SMA connector is always ground. And now I'm going to touch the same contact I touched before, just like this. And the voltage reading I get is shockingly low. It's only 2.96 volts, so quite a bit lower than the 5 volt it should be. So let's just go and get the current measurements. To measure the current, I'm not going to put the module in the fetcher goggles. We've already measured the voltage, and I'm just going to supply the voltage with my power supply. I can set the voltage right here. So let's hook it up. Alright, now I've got the module hooked up to my power supply. Same thing as before, the most bottom pin I'm trying to show you right here is the 5 volt, and the third pin from the bottom is the ground. And I've already connected the ground of my multimeter again, and now I'm just going to set the voltage I've measured before, the 2.95 volt. I'll just put you down right here, attach the positive lead to my source, crank it up until we hit the 2.95 volt. There we are. Alright, unfortunately I've just burned the fuse of my multimeter for low current readings, but my power supply also gives me a rough current reading. As you can see, it's very close to a 400 milliamps. Let's just quickly do another test here. I'm going to set you down here, and now I'm going to turn up the voltage to the voltage it should be. That's 5.0 volts. There we go, 5.0 volts. So let's have a look at the current again. Does not change very much. It's a bit above the 400 milliamps. It's roughly at 450 milliamps. So if you are going to do the mod you can do to make the FatShark goggles output the correct voltage, so 5 volts, I'm going to show you later. At least with this module you don't have to worry about burning the cables, the flat cables in your FatShark goggle. If it had worked before, it will also work afterwards. As we've just shown, if you supply the module 5 volts, it will draw almost exactly the same current it did before. Therefore, I would say there's no risk of damaging the FatShark goggles by the slightly higher current. Alright, so let's just quickly do the math on that numbers we just got. I've already told you that there is a way to get the 5 volt out of the 5 volt pins, even under load of the module, for example. And to do this you have to desolder a little conductor from the PCB of the FatShark goggles and just bridges with a big solder glob or just a small piece of wire. This mod was kind of found by Immersion RC. As I mentioned before, they kind of discovered the problem of the FatShark goggles at first. The theory is that the little conductor has quite a high resistance. If there's some current flowing through this resistor, which should be just the coil, but every coil has a low resistance. In this case it's probably a bit higher, and you're going to drop voltage, and if you just take out that little resistor, the voltage drop will be quite a bit lower. So let's just calculate how much power we drop. So at first let's calculate the voltage we dropped in the goggles.
We saw that it was in the first time without the load of the module, were exactly 5 volts. After we've applied the load, in this case the module, it were only 2.95 volts. I'm just going to calculate the difference.
That's a voltage difference of 2.05 volts. Let's quickly multiply that by the current we measured.
That was 0.4 amps.
That makes 0.82 watts. So nearly a watt is dropped in the goggles in the 5 volt rail. I'm not sure if the entire voltage is dropped just on this tiny little coil, or if it's another part in the rail which also drops voltage, but I guess it's mostly in the coil. I'm going to measure that later. So while we have the calculator out, let's just also calculate the resistance that the 5 volt line has.
For that we are just going to divide the dropped voltage, that was a 2.05 volts, divided by the current, 0.100.
Equals 5.125. So roughly 5 ohms is the resistance of the entire 5 volt line in the FatShark goggles. Alright, now I'm going to dig in deep and actually take apart my new goggles, which kind of hurts, but it's for science. So let's get into it. First time I'm taking these goggles apart, you have to
start by taking off the faceplate. I've been told that you just have to gently push and pull. Oh, there we go. Now let's go to the other side. Kind of hurts to hear that noise. Come on. I'm scared. Dang. Does not want to come apart. Oh. There we go. Let's try that on the other side. Nope, it does not want to come apart. There we go. I think everything is still fine. We've got the face plate off, so now we can continue taking it apart. First of all, I'm going to remove that little door right here. There we go. And next I'm going to remove this screw and the other screw right down here, so we can get this thing apart. Let me quickly grab the screwdriver right here. Should fit. Store these bolts somewhere, I can found them later. Let's go for the second one. I forgot to mention there's a third one right down here in the nose segment. Just going to also screw it out. Now it's just held together by a few clips. One is right here at the nose. You just to push down the lower half and it should come loose. There we go. There are a few more clips in the front here. They've already come open, interestingly. Yeah, you can see there's 3 clips right here. You should have pushed down the lower segment again, just pull it apart. Now you can carefully pull it apart. Ooh, all those cables, I'm scared. Alright, that's apart enough.
The board we are looking for is a board right here on the left side. Just going to grab it and pull it out. Ooh. It's stuck in there. There we go. There's the board and the conductor. That makes the problem, that immersion as he tells make the problem, is, let's search for it. I'm just going to quick pull out the cable, just like that. And now let's search for the coil. Just quickly changed cameras, because I can't get in the details so much with my little action camera. So the coil we are searching for is labeled L1 and it's right here. As you can see, L1, and it's in series with the 5V pin, so it's in series with the module, and it's right the very first component that's next close up to the module. Therefore we can tell it's just acts as a voltage cleaning device. It's part of an LC filter. I'm going to talk about that later in the video and the problem that can come with removing this coil. Alright, but first of all I want to get in there and measure again. Now I've got the cable from the fetcher goggles plugged back in and I'm going to power them up and measure the voltage dropping about this coil, because I'm serious to see how much volts and how much watts is dropped across this tiny coil, and if it's actually worth it to bridge it, or if the resistance come from another place in the circuit of the fetcher goggles. So let's go ahead and just turn them on real quick. Alright, so now I've got everything hooked up. I've got the module turned on. I've hooked my multimeter up with one clamp to this cable, which goes into the very bottom pin of the connector for the module, which is directly connected to the left side of the coil, as you can see in the PCB design, and I've also measured it to make clear. Right now there's no module plugged in, so there's no current flowing over the coil, I assume. Just to verify that, I'm going to measure the voltage dropping about the coil. I'm going to attach the other side to the other side of the coil. As we can see, exactly 0.0 volts are dropped in the coil. That means that there's no current flowing through the coil, or it has a very low resistance, and we are going to find it out just in a second. Alright, so now I've got the module plugged in. Make sure it's the wrong way around. I've got my multimeter hooked up to the 1 pin again. That's the pin that should supply the 5 volts to the module, and it's a pin that's directly connected to the left side of the coil. And now I'm just going to turn on the module. Yep, lights come on, everything's fine. I'm going to repeat the test I've done previously. I'm going to take the multimeter, attach it to the other side of the coil. As we can see, above the coil it drops 0.68 volts. Alright, so now I've let it run for a while, a couple of minutes, and the coil is getting quite hot. If I touch it too long, it will definitely hurt. It's above 70 degrees Celsius. that's for sure, I'd say. Oh, damn it, really hurts. Yeah, so let's just turn it off and do the math on the voltage and the voltage getting dropped above the coil again as we have the measurements right now. So here we are back again on the calculator, and we are just going to calculate the same things again. Let's just say the drop across the coil was quite close to the 0.7 volts, so for simplicity I'm just going to calculate with the 0.7 volts. So first of all, let's calculate the voltage that is dropped across the coil.
So the 0.7 volts times the 0.4 amps
equals 0.28 watts. So not the entire voltage dropped through the coil, but quite a bit. So if you want to have the voltage 0.7 volts higher, you can go ahead and just bridge this coil, but I'm going to talk about it later in detail. Just want to say real quick here that the 0.28 watts will get transformed into heat by the coil. That's what we could feel previously. And for fun, I'm just going to calculate the resistance of the coil.
In order to do that, we've just got to divide voltage by the current. So 0.7 volts again divided by the 0.4 amps.
It's 1.75 ohms roughly. So the resistance of that coil is roughly 1.75 ohms. So it's me from the future. I just want to add something. The voltage that will be dropped through the coil will be different from Fetcher gaggle to Fetcher gaggle, and it also highly depends on the current the receiver module drawing. But I bet that the 1.75 ohms will be almost the same for every gaggle. So you can calculate the voltage that will be dropped across the coil by Ohm's law. I'm going to show you the so-called idiot triangle here, how it works. Basically, it's a good way to work with the Ohm's law. What you are gonna do, you draw the triangle like that, put the finger on the value you want to calculate. For example, if I want to calculate the voltage, I'm just going to put my finger here. I see the voltage is R times E, that's the resistance times the current. If I want to calculate the current, I'm going to put my finger here, and I can see the current is U, that's the voltage, divided by R, that's the resistance. So in our case, we want to calculate the voltage that is dropped across the coil. That's a thing you've got to acknowledge. The U right here is not the voltage you are going to get behind the resistor. It's the voltage that is dropped across the resistor. That's very important. So all you've got to do to calculate the voltage that will be dropped across the coil is you've got to multiply the resistance of the coil, which I measured was 1.75 ohms, times the amps your module is drawing. After you've calculated that voltage, you've just got to subtract from the 5 volts, and you will get the voltage that the Fetcher goggles will output with the module installed. So in the end, now let's have a word about removing that coil. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do it, because it seems to work just fine with the coil there. If you want to see how to bridge the coil, I highly recommend watching the latest video from Joshua Bardwell. I put a link to that in the description. However, I've got to tell you that the coil is there for a reason. So as I have already mentioned before, there are a few hints in removing that coil. It's actually a part of an LC filter. What an LC filter does is it filters out noise or other HF frequency that might be polluting the power line. And on things like the receiver module, it's critical that they get a clean voltage. So if you are bridging that coil, it could be that the module will perform worse because the noise increases. However, most of the modules have quite a good internal voltage filtering, so they can deal with the voltage with a bit more noise in it with no problem. Immersion SE already confirmed it for their rapid fire module, that it has plenty enough internal filtering, so there will be no problem with that module. However, You've got to find out your own how it will turn out with your module. Also, if you don't feel like you can do this on your own, taking your goggles apart, desoldering this little coil and bridging it, I've heard that you can just send the goggles in to the FetShark support and tell them they should do it, and they'll do it for you. I think you just have to pay shipping. If you know anything more detailed about it, please just leave it down in the comments so everybody else who's wondering about it can benefit from your knowledge and just read it and know how they can do it, what's going to cost, and so on and so forth. Alright, I hope you learned something today, and this fiddling around from me measuring some data and so on was helpful or just interesting. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate it if you give a thumbs up, leave a subscription to my channel, and or just share the video. Alright guys, have a nice day and bye bye.